Good evening, everybody. On behalf of Jetco Publishing House and Bookworm, I invite you to a virtual book discussion on A Full Life by Sabira Merchant. The author will be in conversation with Reena Pereira from Bangalore. I'm Michelle Paris, a native of Mangalore, though Bangalore has become home since a couple of years now. I'm a pastry chef by profession, and I've been in the industry for over 10 years now, and I teach at a pastry school. I absolutely enjoy oration, and it is an honor to be in the presence of our wonderful guests today. Thank you for your time and for tuning in. Without further ado, let me begin with the introductions. Gracing us with her presence, Sabira Merchant, the author, is a name you associate with sophistication and good taste. A trendsetter, she adds sparkle to Mumbai's performing arts scene with her presence. Bold, beautiful, and brilliant, Sabira is India's beloved thespian, celebrated quiz queen, and renowned grooming and etiquette expert. From bringing disco to the city, her nightclub Studio 29 ushered in a new era in Mumbai's nightlife, causing frenzy among party goers in the 80s, to training beauty queens such as Priyanka Chopra and Lara Dutta before they went on to win their crowns. Sabira's legacy can leave anyone green with envy. For a suburban Muslim girl who got married in her teens to the love of her life and had three children one after another, the feats Sabira has accomplished are astounding and inspiring, given how difficult it was for women back then to balance personal life and career, that too in theatre, radio, and television. In her memoir, A Full Life, Sabira recounts her eventful journey, her triumphs, setbacks, joys, fears, and hopes. And through her journey, a rare glimpse into Mumbai's glorious past. It's wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. An introduction about Reena Pereira, our moderator. Reena Pereira is a human resources, diversity and inclusion, and communications professional. She has held senior leadership positions in multinationals like Wipro and Standard Chartered Bank. She currently contributes to the Women's Commission on key issues that uplift the girl child and empower women. She is an active contributor to literature and literature festivals. She believes the best way to beat Bangalore traffic is to get to your destination early and read. And she also swears by the fact that a handbag qualifies as stylish only if it can hold a book. She has a special penchant for collecting and reading autobiographies and memoirs. Bookworm Bangalore is pleased to welcome Bangalore's bookworm, Reena Pereira, to moderate this event.
Thank you.
Our host for today, Bookworm, who stocks used, new, and even rare copies at great prices. They are a 20-year-old bookstore and a book lover's paradise located on Church Street, Bangalore, which is in the heart of the city. You can spend hours at Bookworm as you are greeted by the diversity of books on the shelves. You not only walk out with a book, but also a smile on your face. Bookworm has been doing book launches since the past 6 years and has conducted more than 150 events and also ships books pan India. And now about the publisher, Jetco Publishing House. They are prominent publishers in India, founded in 1846. The company's name, Jay means victory in Hindi. Jetco was India's first and only publisher of paperback books in the English language. I now hand over to the moderator, Reena Pereira, to commence the much-awaited book discussion.
Welcome, Sabira.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome.
Welcome, everybody who's joined in here today. We are logged on from Bangalore, and I thank the viewers for joining us on a Saturday evening. And why not when we have Mrs. Sabira Merchant with us? Sabira, congratulations on the release of your memoir. We saw it beautifully stuck behind Krishna in Bookworm 2 as of today. It's the highlight of the day and well stacked for the evening and for weeks to come. A full life does depict your life in all its aspects, more than I ever knew and more than people logged on in this show ever knew. Bombay's quiz queen, disco fever, theatre icon, the brush with cinema, and yet the family being the center of everything. As of now, this is a hot seller in bookstores. While writing a biography, in one way, Sabira, you're inching forward. In another, you're moving backwards. But in the end, deeply satisfying. Opening comments and a message to our viewers. Sabira Merchant.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. It's such an honor to be interviewed by you, Reena. And I'm looking forward to this half hour that we're going to be spending together. And I hope it to be a frank and free discussion so that everybody can appreciate the fact that I would like to share parts of my life with them.
So let's start with you as a child, maybe the best way to start. In the opening chapter, you said you were innocently playing tiles at the age of 4 or 5 on a balcony, and you heard that Mama and Dada are not your real parents. Those words split your world in two. In reality, you were handed over as a child to your uncle who was childless. Babaji, you call your biological dad, is the architect of Pakistan, a poet, an editor, an artist. Impressive. But the dad who adopted and raised you was of westernized culture, hung around with race goers, expats, Parsi, Anglo Indian businessmen. You became his social partner, learning diplomacy and social skills. Now, over time, your parents moved to Pakistan, is what I read, and you, as an adopted child, remained in India. You became India's legacy. So tell us briefly about your childhood and the importance of accepting your past if we have to go on and become the best version of ourselves.
Well, I'll tell you something. Uh, the first part of it is when I came to hear about the fact that I wasn't really belonging to my parents and somebody else, and I was somebody else's daughter, was very, very hurtful. It was, I wish that anybody who adopts a child should tell the child when the child starts speaking that we love you, we adopted you, we love you more than your original parents. That why we brought you here with us. They should slowly break the truth to the child. And this is what I have advised people throughout. And this will probably help your listeners and your viewers. The fact that a child, when is adopted, should be told the first thing as soon as it starts understanding that they were loved and they were adopted because they were cared for, and it's not because anybody wanted to discard you as such, because otherwise those scars remain with you throughout. And you always feel, oh, why did they do that? You know, I should have been with my real parents. But my father really adored me. He was absolutely wonderful. So, I mean, I accepted it and as part of my life and went on. And I really had a great relationship with him. I cannot tell you how wonderful it was. I miss him to this day. His photograph is by my bedside. And I miss him and I think about him all the time. A lot of people subsequently have, who came to know about my adoption before the book, of course, had called me and asked me, well, how do we approach our children? And I said, the first thing is call them, give them a loving hug, make them sit down and tell them that we loved you so much. That's why we have you with us. And never keep anything hidden. This is one thing that I would love to have your viewers listen to, because later on, when you find out, it's something that scars you for life.
As adoption is becoming very common today, that's an impressive message that we need to carry on when we take that call of adopting a child. Apart from that, you were also a child bride, got married very early to the love of your life, Chotu. And by the time you were 21 years, you had 3 kids, one after the other. You were caught up in a whirlwind of domesticity, but you still wanted to do more. And that's when your career began. trying out radio, TV, theatre, and not playing bridge as per the suggestion of Chotu. Programs were after 8 at night. You tucked your children into bed and you worked while they were sleeping, unheard of in those days.
Well, I guess it was
How did you
but you see, everybody in those days, Reena, I mean, even now people work, right? So they can only finish and have their pleasurable time practicing at theater and other activities after their work life was over. And that was about 6:37. They'd finish their work and then they'd leave their place of work and come over to Alex or Pearls or Adi Marsbon's and then have our rehearsals. So the rehearsals had to be late in the evening, and I had to sacrifice at that time my family time. I had to. But my husband was very understanding. Honestly, none of this would have happened if I didn't have an understanding husband. So I think it's very important that this goes out to your listeners, that it's if you really love someone, you let them have their freedom. And Chotu used to always say, I'll never bind you with chains, but always with silken threads.
and then, as you speak about it, then began your show, What's the Good Word? A quiz show, kickstarting the only English show which ran on air for over 15 years. That catapulted you into the celebrated quiz queen of Bombay. I've had so many requests, Sabira, to bring this up on our discussion today, but guess what? I'm not going to do it because I have a viewer of your show, Jennifer Buckingham Tavares, then in Bombay, now in Bangalore, to ask you the next question. Could we have Bookworm and Book Admin spotlight Jennifer, please? Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Reena. Hi, Sabira. It's so good to see you.
Hi.
I grew up in Bombay and I've always admired you. My mom and brother are also on this show. We diligently watched What's the Good Word. I think it was Monday night, if my memory is right.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think any household in Bandra missed even an episode of yours. So that's how much we loved your show. But my question to you today is, without the internet back then, how did you manage to create the content week after week for this program? And if you were given an opportunity to do an episode today, would you change the format of that episode?
Coming to your second question first, I wouldn't change the format. The format was absolutely perfect. It was wonderful. Everybody enjoyed it. Everybody took part, and it was all encompassing for the audience. But I'll tell you one thing: I went through the most difficult part of my life. If I look back and I say, what was the hardest thing that I did? I definitely those shows that I did for 15 years. There were no Googling in those days, right? We had to sit with books. I had to sit with volumes of encyclopedia. I had to go to Adi Marsbon's office, sit there for hours over a cup of coffee and go through the book and mark them out. Because mind you, once you go on TV and once you have uttered something, it's questionable. Anybody like you could have questioned saying, how did you say this particular phrase? Or why did you say this? And I would have to keep the markings with me from all the encyclopedias and the books so I could answer them, give them the correct feedback. So that was perhaps the hardest time that I've been through, looking up for matter, and also because I had to do it all by myself. There wasn't anybody else to help me. Adi used to say, come to my office. I've got tons of encyclopedias. Sit there, have your cup of coffee and work. And all these for a few hundred rupees in those. Not that that mattered. I never looked at that part at all. That didn't matter at all. It was the fun of being there, part of life, part of the whole game of being there in front of the entire Bombay audience first, and then of course the whole of India. I'll never forget that once I was doing a play in Chennai, and I was at the dinner table, and it happened to be a Monday night, and I was at the table having my dinner and watching myself on TV. It was such a funny feeling that you had, a very happy feeling. And we had people coming on live. That was also a challenging thing. People come to cook something so that you could say, what was that terminology about? People coming to do a ballet dance, people coming to do a mudra. So had to think about that as well, to get somebody to come on and do something live so that it involved the audience. So I think Adi, a lot of it was Adi's brainchild, but the work behind it had to be put by me. And also another thing which was challenging was that we much you have no idea about. I have never seen so much made in my entire life. There was a whole room that was dedicated to sacks of mail. There were just sacks all over the place. People from all over India would write and say they wanted to watch, choose, and I had to call something like about 20 people. So then eliminate them, come down to 10, then come down to the necessary 6, because I had to see if they were smart enough. I couldn't put somebody dumb in front of the TV. Sometimes I would ask Adi to come and help me, but otherwise he said, no, honey, baby, this is your thing. You just have to handle it yourself. So I had to do it. So you can imagine the hard work that went into it. You just sat back there home and watched the program and enjoyed it and said, well, that's a great show. But the work that went behind it is what nobody knows about. And this is, I think perhaps this is the second time that I'm speaking about it. It was very hard work. The show looked excellent and it sounded very good, but nobody knew what went behind it. How did you get all those questions? How did you get all those words? I mean, it was really a very tiring experience. Sometimes I had to sit there the entire day at his office. But he was a wonderful person. Before I went out and I did anything on actual TV, he would go through it meticulously with me, correct it if it was wrong, and then we would go out in front of the audience.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you,
And
Sabira, for answering that. Thank you. It's very inspiring to hear your answer. Thank you so much.
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Jen.
Jennifer. Do we have Elizabeth here? Elizabeth, if you could, I'm conscious that you're going into a call, so whenever possible, if you could unmute and share your experiences. She has seen Tughlaq in person, so I would like her experience on that front. And while I give you time, I'm going into a very interesting aspect of Sabira's life, and this is probably something that most of us do not know. So we delve on your entrepreneurial stint for a while, and we are talking about 1978, 1979. Sorry, just an introduction. Elizabeth, would you want to speak?
Yeah, I just want to say, Sabira, you've been such a legend. And I mean, as you mentioned, it was not the days of Google or whatever. I mean, you had to do a lot of research while we just sat back and enjoyed your show. And I'm from Bombay, was from Bombay and Kulaba. And so I grew up in that atmosphere of theater, elocution, and Pearl Padamsi would come to school and, give us these classes. And your show was one of our highlights, really. And so thank you for all that you've done. And it's amazing because, as you rightly said, there was so much of research that went behind that seamless kind of production and presentation. And all we had to do was sit back and enjoy and, of course, educate ourselves while we were at it.
Yes, that's right. I sometimes think, in my reflection, sometimes I dream about it too, all that work that went into it and how easy it all looked on TV, so effortless. That's true. But that's part of the art of doing it. You have to make it look as if it's just easy and effortless.
Seamless.
And get questions. I got questions asking, how could you have said this particular thing? And I would get it on a postcard or a letter because there was nothing. There was no television. I mean, there was no
Absolutely.
emails or
Yes.
anything. So everything was by snail mail, but we managed to get through to people, and the people at Doordarshan were very helpful with all the mail that came in, because I tell you, that was the one thing that astounded me. I just couldn't understand how to ever answer all those letters. They were sacks because everybody wanted to come, you see, and have a great time. But anyway, those were the days, and you can never reproduce them again. No.
You were part of our youth, you see, and that's what I'm just saying. You were a legend, even of that time and as well as now. And I'm so glad to Reena that she has got you on the show and got us to put a little bit of our input to say thank you for whatever you've done, because that was a wonderful show. I'm presently in Texas visiting family, and so it's still very bleary-eyed, but staying up to listen to you.
Thank you so
And
much.
Reena.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you for joining us all the way from Texas, and even aware that you have a call now. So we leave you to that. But we were talking about Sabira's entrepreneurial stint way back in 1978-79. When disco came to India, you were the brainchild of Mumbai's first discotheque. Studio 29 was a members-only nightclub which had displaced a landmark barber shop. Mirrored ball, Tivoli lights, machine that would rain bubbles on the dancers, and strobe lamps. These were personally chosen by you from London. Played host to Boney M. Raj Kapoor watched your sound and light show. You kept injecting new life into it to rev people up. For a young lady, that was stellar leadership, Sabira.
Oh, thank you. It was such a strange thing that this barber shop on the ground floor. It's a wonderful position. And my partner was very, very kind, very, very generous with me. And my husband and my partner. And when I went to him and I told him that we would have a discotheque, he was shocked. He said, "You mean people dance to records?" Because in those days, if you remember, or maybe you're too young to remember, we danced to bands. We danced to Goody Sarabhai. We danced at the clubs to bands. We danced at when people were singing, but nobody danced to little black records that were put on a machine. So he couldn't understand how this could ever be successful. But I persuaded him, and we moved the barber shop. The very successful barber shop, mind you, it was a very good barber shop. We moved it one floor up, and we spruced it up. And I got the discotheque to sort of happen in that place where the barber shop was. And then my husband and I went away to London, and we got somebody called Mick Jones, M-I-C-K, Mick Jones, who was a wizard at sound, because the sound had to be just perfect. And he designed the whole console and the sound and the kind of absorption that the sound would have by having even carpeting on the walls, just not on the floor, but on the walls as well. And we had great acoustics. So that's what made the discotheque a wonderful success. And then another thing that I did, I'll never forget this also, was to inject new life in the studio by not just having people dance to it, but having shows. So every weekend or every 2 weekends, we'd have a lovely show, a fashion show, a jazz ballet, just somebody coming to sing. So there was somebody coming to act. There was always something new happening. So it would attract the same members to come again. And I remember Salman Khan. How could I tell you this? I don't think I mentioned this in the book, but he used to come and hang outside the studio and wanting to come in, and he couldn't afford to come in those days. And my manager would come and tell me, "This young Salman Khan has come again. What shall we do about him?" I said, "No, just let him in, you know." So he would come in. And some years ago, maybe just about 8-10 years ago, we were at a function where I was present as one of the guests, and he was the speaker. And he happened to spot me. And he said, "I will not forget this lady, Sabira Merchant. She let me free into a studio, and I would like to thank her for that." So
I read that you even let the goons into it. They came with charging bikes and they wanted a peek of your place, and they said this place is heaven.
So I had to be absolutely diplomatic about that one, because otherwise they would have started destroying the place and done something to it. Call them in, treat them with honor, treat them with respect. And that's it. I told everybody, the bouncer, everybody, you are not to come here. Sit back and just relax. Let me handle this. I said, "Main tumhari behan hu."
Yeah.
First, that's what I had to just tell him. And he said, "I will look after your studio like my life. I will be your champion." So you see, sometimes you have to use diplomacy. I mean, not sometimes, you have to use diplomacy all.
Yes. So over time, you built a reputation as a wordsmith and you were signed on for speech and diction at the Miss India pageant. You have worked with them for over 25 years. Have pageants taken a different turn over time and evolved differently?
Well, right now they have so many pageants that you don't know which one, the women don't know which one to join. In the old days, we just had the good old Miss Femina, Miss India, and all the young ladies would come to that. So now there is a Miss India going abroad kind of show. That there are so many Mrs. Indias, and a couple of ladies have come to me during the last few months, and I mean, they've been coming to me throughout, but especially during the last few months because they're going to different Mrs. Worlds all over the place. So there are so many competitions now that it's hard to choose one that you should join and which one will give you the most satisfaction, so as to speak. But in the old days, it was just that one competition, and it attracted the finest from all over India. And of course, Priyanka Chopra was one of my best students. She was excellent. She was a fantastic student. I cannot tell you,
So
even if,
knock off a US twang and speak an Indian accent and
yes, absolutely. And she would, wherever I went for any other workshop, because I still teach. For instance, I had a workshop today, and I still teach people from all over India as to how to speak and diction and the whole thing about fine dining as well. That's a very, very lovely module that we have, that I teach them how to come to the table.
I was getting right to that question, as you said. So, to combine the topics that you talk on, be it etiquette or diction or body language, networking, you coined this 2-day module and called it corporate finesse.
Yes, yeah.
So,
And
how
that
important is that in people's lives?
is very, very important. To me, I started saying that, look, I think God has given me a gift. I should impart this to others. So I started by teaching a few people, and they were so happy, they were so successful, and the language so well after that, that I said, I'd just like to sort of teach groups of people. And then companies started hearing about this and approaching me. And I used to teach them basically speech and diction. And the fine dining was not there at all, that module. And also the foreign pronunciations like deja vu and things like that. So I had gone for a lunch with my husband to a restaurant, and I saw the group of people that I had already interacted with and taught at another table, and they were behaving so badly at the table, grabbing the bread from one side and bringing it to the other, and just putting their elbows on the table and slurping fingers and things like that. So I went up to them and I said, "Listen, I think just teaching you how to speak was not good enough. I think I'll have to approach your management and ask them that I should teach you a nice fine dining section." So they said, "Why not? We'd love to attend because we don't know any better, right? So how do we know? No one's taught us." So then the fine dining module came in, and then the words that pertain to fine dining, like croissant and grand marnier and frappe and all kinds of words that would be there on a menu, which you would not understand and you would not be able to make head nor tail out of. So that's how things evolved over the years, Reena. It's just that one thing led to another, and then it just grew.
That reminds me, you've summed it up very beautifully in your book, and I quote from page 191. Corporate finesse gave you a purpose to wake up to every morning. It allowed me to take all the privileges of studying in a Swiss finishing school, my robust schooling, and the world of diplomacy my father opened to me. along with the refined ways and practices of the people of South Bombay, and bring it to others. You've really summed that up well.
Well, thank you.
So I now move to the next section, which is on theatre, and this is the exciting part of this entire episode. Theatre has been the highlight of Sabira's career. She started acting in 1965 and has over 55 years of experience on stage. I once again read from her book. Of all the jobs I had, I would say theatre was my true calling. It was the biggest part of my identity and it set the stage for so many other hats I donned. Blood raced through my system when I performed on stage. And hence, Here Crafted is a special dedicated section for you on theatre. Sabira, you played the Queen of England in the Buckingham Secret, and the secret was that she was a Parsi. In your regal splendor, dressed as the Queen of England at NCPA Mumbai, you needed to use the ladies' washroom. What happened next?
Oh, it was a beautiful session that we had for taking photographs, a photography session, and it was in the precincts of the Tata Theatre, where the beautiful marble columns are, and we had a family photograph with all the Queen's members of the family, and of course it was taking ours, and I was dressed in like a coronation type of gown with the blue ribbon across and all the medals and things and the crown and everything else, and everything was in place, right? But nature calls, so I had to use the ladies' room, the restroom. So I went there very carefully, lifting the heavy dress up, and there were two ladies in the restroom, and they actually almost passed out when they saw me. They said, "Oh my God, Your Majesty!"
Yeah, you can imagine. You would have been even the clothes came from your closet. It was all yours.
All the suits were mine except for one of the gowns that the Queen wears to greet Obama. Obama walks into the palace on one evening, and they have a get together, lovely session. And for that one, we had the blue ribbon and the silver gown, and of course, everything was perfectly engineered for that moment. But otherwise, all the clothes that I wore, all the suits, you see, the Queen is very fond of colors, as you know. She loves brilliant colors, bright greens, purples, the fuchsias, all kinds of colors. So I happen to have by the grace of God, I happen to have a good wardrobe, which I've got through the years. So I said it's never, the Queen would never wear anything made by any Darzi. So the Darzi would not do a perfect job with the shoulders and stuff. And unfortunately, they had a limited amount of money, the people who were doing the play, the Buckingham Secret. So then we had to use my clothes, and I used them throughout the play. Every single suit was mine. Yes.
In a streetcar named Desire, you won the All India Critics Award in a Bengali dominated era. The whole show was conducted in Bengali, and the only English word spoken were a streetcar named Desire. And that was your cue to go up and collect the award. Not just that, you learned the maxim on kindness to strangers, which were the parting lines of the play, and that maxim and phrase has served you all your life.
Yes, it has. The kindness of strangers is something, there are some things in life that stay with you, like something that my husband said to me, or something that my child said to me, and certain things just stay with you. And this is the one line that I've always felt. And I just feel that strangers, not even just the kindness, of course, the kindness of strangers, but whenever I'm that kind of person that when I'm in the elevator in a hotel or any strange place, I smile at people and I say hello to them. And my husband would always say, "You're saying hello to people in the elevator as if you know them." And I'd say, "Well, it's nice just to, you're riding 20 floors together. So say hello to them, say something warm to them." And they would immediately open up and say, oh, yes, how nice, and this, that, and the other. So you see, you have to go out of yourself a little bit, reach out to people. And I'll tell you one thing, Reena, you reach out to people, people will always respond to you positively.
So we end on that note for that one. And once again, messages after messages. If you read on the chat, we are seeing you're leaving us with really good phrases. So we have the next one. Duet for One was an intense production involving a lady who had lost one of her limbs and her psychoanalyst. You were on a wheelchair and you would weep when doing it. How was it playing a physically challenging role?
Oh, very challenging. It was, according to me, that was the best thing that I ever did, was to be in for Duet for One. And I had to be obviously confined only to wheelchair. So there was no physical movement to show anger or resentment or joy or acceptance or any one of these emotions. So you had to sit in the chair and everything came out through your voice and your facial expression. So that was the most difficult thing to do. And I was so thoroughly in that play. It was the best production I have ever done. And even now, when I think of it, it brings tears to my eyes. At the end of the production, one particular day, I couldn't get out of the wheelchair. I just couldn't get out of it. I was just stuck to it. I'd become so used to it that I forgot that I can get up and walk and do it and dance and do everything else. And the governor happened to come to that particular show. And the governor, I should have stood up for him, but I was so sort of engrossed in my role that I forgot to rise up from the chair. And he came forward, he shook my hand when I was sitting in the chair and said it was a wonderful performance, etc. And at the end of it, I said, oh my God, you should have got up. How come? But I was so much into that role. That was the best thing that I ever did.
So we are talking about Ali Jung here. So he was the governor at that point of time, and heard that even he was in tears when he watched your performance.
Yes, he was. He really came and he was wiping his tears.
So we move forward to Linda Loman's Death of a Salesman. And I was keen to bring that in because you played it twice and 20 years apart.
Yes.
The final scene set in a graveyard after the husband, Willie, commits suicide is only 5 minutes long. But you were riveting in it and brought the audience to tears every single time.
Yes, and it's so strange that you're mentioning is this, because I'm going to do it now, just the reading of it for the Bombay Gymkhana. Okay. We're going to do it as a reading this month, or end of the month, or early next month. And I'm going to be reading that particular part where Linda Loman says she cannot cry. And then she actually begins to cry. It's even when I speak about it now, it just brings tears to my eyes. But she's so much in love with her husband, Willie, and she's paid everything. Everything was paid on the apartment. Everything was paid on the house. And then he kills himself. And she cannot accept it. And even now, when I'm telling you, when I'm speaking to you now, I feel like crying, because it was such an emotional moment. And if you are a really true actor, you throw yourself in that role so completely that you forget yourself. You don't know who you are. That's actually, the acting is such a catharsis for me, because I forget Sabira. I don't know who she is. And I'm so much the other character that it's such a transition from one person to the other. You, at the end of it, you think, God, I'm not Linda, I'm Stabby, you know, I have to think like that and come back to another world, because you throw so deeply into the role, so complete.
So let's get to an imaginary world. It's an unprecedented feat that you played the female version of Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar, that's what I'll tell you. That's all Alec's idea, and Alec Padamsee, who envisaged the whole thing. He said, if we could have an Indira Gandhi, we can have a female Caesar, and we would do it as a play. I played it for 2 years as readings. We did it at various venues, at clubs, and at the bookshop as well. We did it there, and we did it in many places, colleges, schools, everywhere. And I did play Caesar, and it was a great challenge because you just have to. And I'm a small person. I'm not a tall woman. I'm only 5'2". So to be small physically and yet play large was a big challenge. And if Alec had been alive, we would have been in the middle of the production right now. But fortunately, he's not there, and it's just died a natural death, let's say.
But just to commemorate that, they're talking about Alec at the moment, Alec and Jerson and some of the theatre greats. So could we end this section with a reading from any one of your plays? Maybe that's the best way to remember Alec.
Well, Alec and Jerson and myself, we did readings from Shakespeare. And I read from Taming of the Shrew, and I read from Macbeth. And of course, I played Lady Macbeth. So I'll just say a few lines from that. The raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Come, ye spirits, that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here. Fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. Make thick my blood, stop up the passage and access to remorse, so that no compunctious feelings of nature come between the feeling and it. And it. Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall, you murdering ministers, wherever in your sightless substances you feed on nature's mischief. Come, thick night, and pall thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, so that my keen life sees not the wound it makes. No heaven peeps through the blanket of the dark to cry, hold, hold.
Well, if you're reading the comments, I don't need to say anything. There are many who have responded on this, but for lack of words, I conclude this from a line of Alec Padamsi's foreword from Sabira's book. Sabira has all the makings of a theatre great. Discipline, vulnerability, and excellent speech. She has terrific ability in tragedy and yet great in comedy due to her diction, thus becoming iconic for what English theatre stood for at that time. You're welcome at this point, viewers, to write in a few questions, and we come to it in some time. So, Sabira, we're getting towards the end of the session, unfortunately. Sabira, before we move to the conclusion, you speak about losing your husband Chotu in 2016 and your firstborn Ali subsequently, who was suffering from depression. You still relive their memories through a daily routine?
Well, I pray for them. I'm a Christian. I pray for them and think of them and hope they're happy wherever they are. It was a great shock for me. I mean, my husband's death, I was expecting he was ill and he was in the hospital, so I kind of slowly accepted it. But my son's came as a total shock to me because he got a sudden heart attack. He was in a apartment close to mine, living close to me, and I would send him his meals every day and have his laundry done and everything so that he would have everything delivered to him. And there was a man there in charge who was to take care of him. But suddenly, about 4 in the morning, my servant comes to me and shakes my leg and says, get up, and Ali is no more. And I said, how could it be? What could happen? This was in February. Reena, I lost my husband in December. In February, I lost my I just told God, how are you testing me so much by giving me this terrible blow? And so soon after Choto, I was still recovering. Not recovering was not possible. I'm still recovering, but it was so fresh at that time. And the acceptance still hadn't come in about Choto, and then it was Ali. So it was
Yeah.
a big shock to me, but
On that note, I read your words. I do allow myself to grieve for them, but I do not revel on it.
no. And I don't say, oh my God, why did you do this or anything? No, just give me the strength to accept it. That's all.
And as we wind down at this moment, here's a shout out to Jaiko. If we have Nisha from Jaiko here, we could spotlight her at this point. So Jaiko did not just publish the book; they handed over a writing partner, Mati Parekh, who has co-authored this book, A Full Life. Sabira, can bitter chocolate and coffee co-author a book?
Yes, she was a wonderful girl. She is a wonderful girl, and she's very insightful. She asked me piercing questions, and we got along like a house on fire. It was just a wonderful relationship that we had, and I'll always be thankful to Mitali for doing this.
So, at this point of time, admin, could we spotlight? We are moving towards closure. Could we spotlight Krishna here? I think I can do that.
Okay, you see, then I'll roam around.
Hi, Reena. Can you hear me?
So, Sabira, this is Krishna, the owner of Bookworm, which is a bookstore centrally located here. And behind Krishna, you can see a stack of your books.
Yes.
It's the highlight of the bookstore. So, Krishna, a few words from you.
Yeah, thank you, Reena. Thank you, Sabira ma'am. We are happy to be the book partner for this session. Bookworm is more than 20-year-old bookshop located in Church Street. We request Sabira ma'am to visit us for a book signing whenever she comes to Bangalore. Please visit us, ma'am.
Of course, if I'm in Bangalore, I will definitely come across. I will see that I make a mission to do so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Sabira, we have Oscar Menezes with us, who's pretty much the golden voice of Bangalore. Oscar, if you can unmute, say hi, and ask a question.
Hi, Sabira. Good evening.
Hi.
I am the brother of Asha and Stephen Pinto.
Oh, really?
Yes. And 14 years ago, I had possibly my first lesson in etiquette from you.
Really?
In Goa for the wedding of Asha's daughter.
Yes.
And we were supposed to read the epistle at the Mass.
Yes.
Now, I was supposed to convey this to you. So I walked there. You were sitting down in the aisle, in the pew, and I asked you, Sabira, you're supposed to read the epistle. And you said, would you mind not talking down at me? So I said, I'm so sorry. I knelt down and explained exactly what you had to do. And then I asked, is there anything else? Yes, you said, please walk me to the altar. And so I did.
Yeah, that's right. It's always, when a lady is walking alone, it's so wonderful if you escort the lady up to where she is.
It was so nice. Yeah.
Always, for wherever they are, escort a lady. Give your lady hold up. Looks so elegant and so beautiful.
We sung together with Oscar, and as Oscar always says, he has a way with women. So I believe it when he narrated that episode. Next on, Asha Elisha. We're closing down. Asha, could you come on Spotlight and ask your question? Asha Elisha. You can unmute and begin.
Hi, Sabira. I'm from Bangalore. I'm a friend of Reena's. No, I just wanted to say that I've noticed that many adopted children, they simply blossom creatively, and because we have some in our family also, and they show a lot of creativity in everything that they do. So I just wanted to mention that.
You
You
know,
are all-
what happens is I think we have a little bit of fight in us. We have a little bit of the thing that we must do things to prove ourselves, that little bit of thing. There's no absolute comfort zone in your parents that no matter what you do, the parents are not going to say anything or something like that. So
yeah.
that acceptance
Yeah.
makes you a little bit more sort of, as you say, fight back and make a niche for yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that observation.
Thank you. Jenny Flora, could we have you unmute and be spotlighted, please, with your next question? I'm reading your comments here.
Totally amazing session. Enjoyed every moment.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
And love the way you did that part so beautifully from memory. Oh wow.
Oh, thank you.
It just was so awesome. Thanks, Sabira. You really made my day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we pretty much wound up with the session. So thank you for joining us this evening. It's a Saturday evening, and the only reason why so many of us would join here is Sabira.
Thank you.
Otherwise, Michelle Perez, could we have you to conclude?
Yes. So I would love to say a big thank you to you, Miss Sabira, for sharing not only your triumphs, but also all the struggles, challenges you had to face to make it to where you are today. You've really inspired us with all the exemplary, with the exemplary life that you have lived. And I would like to quote Lara Datta, who rightly said that very simply, there is no one in this country like Sabira Merchant. She is irreplaceable. And I'm sure everyone who joined us here today will agree 100%. It was an absolute honor having you and hearing you speak and telling us so much about yourself. And I'd like to conclude this book session by thanking Jayco Publishing House and Bookworm, the reason we are here today, and also Reena Pereira for moderating this session ever so delightfully. My dear audience, you've been nothing short of perfect. And with this, I'd like to wish each and every one of you a very great evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Reena.
Thank you, Michelle. You were awesome as well.
Thank you, Reena, for being you just did a wonderful job of putting it all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabira. And thank you, everyone. We can now conclude.
Thank you.